To get your latest updates on these amazing stories, please subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and leave your comments below. I'd love to hear back from you.
It always fascinates me, like you are talking about, is that there is something people have done before us that is absolutely inspiring. And it would be, in my opinion, the way I see it is, it's criminal for me not to attempt it. I'm fine failing. And then I would also say, to be very honest again, is at some point, you have to do it, what you want to do, right? I keep repeating a saying that I've heard, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
That is Niloy Sen, and I'm your host, Santosh Shiva. Welcome to another episode of RunYogi Diaries. This episode is kind of a part 2 of the last week's episode where we talked to Hima, who completed the Moab 240. Niloy was a partner in crime, and he was also the chief architect of this whole journey that these guys put together. Niloy started running pretty much grounds up. He ran many half marathons, he ran marathons, and then pivoted into trail running and went on to complete multiple 50Ks, 50 milers, 100 milers, and the granddaddy of all of them, the 200 milers. The other thing I found fascinating talking to Niloy was his strategy of DNF. He intentionally takes on big projects, does not mind failing at it, and then learns from them. DNF is not end of the world. That is an amazing strategy. So we really sat down and got to talk about how it all started, how and what motivated him to pivot into trails. What did he learn as he went along, pushing his distances? How did he learn to balance between family, training and work? What did he learn about nutrition, pacing, strength training? What did he learn about team management and community? And last but not the least, we get into what's next for him. Let's dig in. Hey Niloy, welcome to RunYogi Diaries.
Thank you, Santosh. Awesome talking to you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you here. You have a fantastic story and a fascinating story of ultra endurance. We are going to jump into the details of it. But first, I'd like to maybe have you do a quick personal introduction and then we'll jump in.
Sure. I'm Niloy Sen, and I'm from actually this small town in India called Sindri. Born and brought up in the state of Bihar. Now it is Jharkhand. And then grew up in a small township. There were people from different parts of the country growing up there. So it's a pretty mixed, diverse environment there growing up. Did my studies in Ranchi, and then, like most of us, started working in Bangalore in software. Did my master's in software engineering as well. And after 4 years, I moved over to the San Francisco Bay Area and was working in the Bay Area, and has been working there since then. in the San Francisco Bay Area. So that's a little bit about me. I have an 8-year-old and a wife, and it's a small family. My
Nice.
rest of my family is back in India, and so I make a lot of visits back home as well.
Awesome. So what year did you move into San Francisco area?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been around for a while now.
Yes.
Cool. Great. So Niloy, thanks for joining again. What got intrigued for me when I read about your story was your amazing journey in the ultra endurance, ultra running domain. And there are not many people I know, at least of Indian origin, who are pushing limits like the way you're doing it. So definitely want to get into how you got there. So let's start from the beginning. How did you get into, what was your fitness journey? What got you into this need to take care of your fitness, first of all, and then we'll jump into how did you get into ultras?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. None of it was planned, right? A lot of it happened. You need the right environment to kind of develop and build some of the thoughts that you have. When I was a kid in school, I was doing short distance running, right? 100 meters, 200 meters. And all through my school life was very athletic. I was into sports. I was doing soccer and short distance running, right? And then, like most of us, life took over. And then there is college and work and kind of everything else. The physical activity, fitness took a backseat. And so I was always looking for an opportunity. You always keep thinking about, one fine day we'll all wake up and start running. And you keep procrastinating. Probably it happens one day, second day. And then the sequence of things that happen is you keep blaming everything else in and around you. Oh, I've got too much of work. I don't have the right friend circle, and all of that. So, so all of this took over a large section of my life, starting from 2000, I would say, even before, like 1998 to about 2010. When I was in the US, spent 3 years, I walk around in the Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco and see a lot of people running. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can do that too. But never got around doing that. The turning point came in 2009 when I got a flyer from someone about this Asha for Education. It's a pretty popular setup. It's there in the Bay Area too. And they were having a session in Sports Basement about, running a half marathon. They would train you for a half marathon or a marathon. And then in that process, you would, collect some money for a charity. And so it was a great cause. And it was a very curated coaching session. So when I just attended that session, I was like, okay, let me sign up. I just signed up. I went and told my wife, this is what I'm doing. She was like, okay, half marathon. Are you sure about it? Don't know. So I remember mile 1 in Baylands Park. That's in San Jose in the Bay Area. And they had this inaugural running session. And mile 1, half a mile, I was huffing and puffing. And I was like, I think I signed up for the wrong thing. This was 2009, 2010, I guess. Yeah. And I didn't know how I will go through that. But, I just said, I think this is a great cause. It brings me back to where I always wanted to be. And I also have a strong notion of stereotypes. And so Indian software engineer, and I didn't want it to be that, right? I had to have some other definition to who I was. I had an inclination to sports, but has always been procrastinating. I wouldn't say somehow the stars did not align. So I really just got in there, signed up, and from there on, the training was phenomenal, right? The
Mm-hmm.
whole activity of the like-minded people getting together. We had weekend runs together where the coaches would train us, all the warm up, warm down, the right way of running, form, speed training, all of that was there. Started learning about nutrition. And on the weekdays, this was on the weekend, and on the weekdays, we had small local groups running in the morning. So it kind of motivates you to wake up in the morning and show up for a 4 mile run or a 5 mile run. And so that really gave me the impetus to, start back my running career again. And really things took off from there. So I totally credit it to, that trigger point being the ASHA support system, and the people around, and the camaraderie and the support. And first half marathon, I remember San Jose Rock and Roll. Again, after doing the half marathon, I was like all done. And I wasn't thinking anything more than that. But that was a significant starting point. Know a group of people who can possibly do that. And that sense of achievement, I still remember, was tremendous. And so that's how really it started off. And it took over from there.
No, that's terrific. No, what I'm hearing in what you're saying is, for you, different people have different motivations to get started. And for you, from what I'm hearing at least, is you are someone who already were quite active when you were in school, and probably there was something missing, or a feeling of, more, we start work, we start earning money, we're married, everything is done, and then you're kind of wondering what else.
Yes.
And especially for people who've been active in their younger days, know the pleasure of being active and competing in athletics or sports or whatever. And what I hear is that you were probably in that space, and it's just that when you're in that space, something like ASHA shows up and you take action, right? I mean, I'm sure ASHA was going around that in front of you even before, but you never picked it up and took action, right? So that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying, and that's amazing. And then what happened? So that was the first half marathon, and you seem to have started your running journey around the same time I started. I started in 2008. So what happened after the half marathon? Did you end up feeling like, man, I can do a lot more than this at that point, and sign up for the big marathon? Or?
Not quite, actually. Okay. So when I did the half marathon, I did it pretty well, and I was very happy about it. And, there were high fives. My wife and my mom-in-law, they came over to, at the finish line, and I was super happy. And then, I was like looking, okay, what next? Right? There's always this what next. And so the what next was really a series of half marathons. So I just, started signing up for any half marathon I could see really locally in California, and just showing up there. Right. And I was doing pretty well. I know the crowd in a road race is really motivating, right? People who unknowns, people who really stay there and really cheer for you and root you. And that was amazing.
So do you consider yourself a fast half marathoner?
Fast is a very relative term. So my fastest has been 1:53.
Okay.
Yeah. I do feel I have not tested my speed yet.
Okay.
Right. But it is definitely a function of training. But we'll see. There are priorities in life, and you always have to balance. We'll come there.
Yeah.
But so after doing a bunch of half marathons, I was like, what next? And so two things happened. I started hearing about people who are doing marathons. And I was like, okay, I was so winded out in a half marathon. How can I do a marathon? It intrigues me. And what it makes me do is sign up. Right. I'm not the very planned person. I just am fascinated with an idea, and I just go with it. Right. With the expectation that there will be a learning in the process. So I signed up for a marathon, in San Francisco Marathon, a year later. And I remember again in San Francisco Marathon, at mile 22, I hit the wall and struggled to just complete it. Was almost walking for the next 4 miles, 4.2 miles. And so that was tough. But, again, when you get to the finish line, you get a medal, then you start thinking, okay, what next? So you come back, talk to a bunch of people, and they say, you know what, there's this another marathon, CIM, or many other, right? So again, I started doing a bunch of other marathons. The good thing also that happened for me was people at work were very supportive.
Okay.
Right. So what I did is I took what I was doing in the races and set up kind of a running thing at work. And so every evening we would just go out and start running. And then we signed up for this, I think it's called the Golden State relay race. And so that's from Napa Valley to a bunch of 12 people sitting on a van, getting down and starting to run. That's a good, I think at about 180 miles from Napa to Santa Cruz Beach. And I signed up with a bunch of people who had absolutely no background in running. Some of them had, all people from work, and we got together, we created a training plan, we started doing our runs, and we actually accomplished that. So, that energy, again, it feeds off really well.
Yeah.
So there was a great support system, went on to do a bunch of marathons. And I remember at some point during the marathons, I started reading this blog from Rajiv Patel. Rajiv Patel is, one of the famous ultra marathoners here. And his blog talked about this crazy things about 135-mile races in I think it was in the United Kingdom. He used to do some of those races there and a few other races. And I was like, here I'm struggling with a 26-miler. And what they were narrating in those blogs was absolutely crazy, beyond comprehension. The mental journey that they were going through. And thanks to Google, it kept suggesting me these other things. And I got totally absorbed in that. Then I also started meeting some of my friends who were doing triathlons. Even Asha, right? One of few of the coaches, they were doing triathlons. So one fine day, I just come and talk to my wife, and she was like, okay, you're doing marathons. That's great. I was like, you know what? I just signed up at work. They were telling us to sign up for a cure for diabetes, some cause. And there was this 100-mile bike ride in Napa. And I wasn't biking at all. I was biking when I was in school. I just told my wife, you know what? I signed up for it. So now I have to buy a bike and train for it and do 100-mile in the next 2 months. By that time, she pretty much, I think she got you're crazy, right? So we started discussing, and from there on, the process of negotiation started, because I was not born an ultra runner, right? She didn't sign up for me being an ultra runner or doing these crazy endurance events. Not many people in my friends group were doing that.
Yeah.
So it just went on, bought a bike, read through a lot of videos, started biking.
What year was this?
This was again same in the first 3 years of my running. Is all of this happened together.
Okay, so 2009 onwards.
Yeah, 2009 to 2012, 13 is all of this is happening simultaneous.
Right.
2012, by the way, is when my son is born. October.
Okay. So you were active all the way in all aspects of your life.
Yes. I mean, I found this new thing, right? That where I felt that, yes, I could slowly increase the bar.
Right.
And learn a few things about it in the process. So I was doing marathons. I bought a bike. I started training on my own, watching videos, bikes. I had no concept of cleats and everything in the bike and gears and all of that. So learned through, did a 100-mile bike ride. It was tough, but not as tough as a marathon,
Yeah.
actually.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Then somebody told me there's this triathlon thing going on. So I remember, again, it was my wife. I was like, I need to learn swimming, but I can't go and ask anyone to teach me swimming. It sounds pretty lame. I'm this, uh, I'm an adult working for a long time um, in my 30s, and I can't just go and ask someone teach me how to swim. I felt embarrassed. So we had a community swimming pool, heated. So I used to tell her, come join me at 10 o'clock at night when nobody's around and throw me this tube, right? If you see me drowning. And so I looked up YouTube and started learning swimming, right? And my wife, she's not a swimmer as well. And so I learned to swim over the course of, just sneaking out at nights and learning by myself. And so that was the aim. So I got the bike going, I got a marathon going. And so I got a swim going. I haven't yet done open water. So my plan was, okay, let's do open water and do a triathlon.
Right.
Yeah, with all of this and reading Rajiv Patel's blog of ultras, I'm like, I need to try ultra.
And what happened to your triathlon?
Yeah, so triathlon was, I got the bike part, I got the marathon part and the swim, but somehow the whole journey, I don't know, maybe the triathletes are not so good at elaborating their journey, right? I'm just super fascinated by somebody's journey when they write those blogs. And I keep reading those blogs and I get sucked up in there. I'm like, okay, great. I think I can do a triathlon. I still need to learn open water swim. But what I'm reading in this 50 milers, 100 milers, 100K, that is something fascinating me to know.
So you didn't continue and you didn't pursue the triathlon at all.
I dropped it. I'm still an active swimmer and I bike once in a while. The other thing is about bike rides. I got really scared by some irate behavior on the roads with the road bikes.
Got it.
So
I had a guest on my show, and I will get you guys connected. His name is Manmad Rebba, and his journey is mostly into triathlons, Ironmans, and Ultramans. And you must talk to him, and of course check out his conversation on this podcast as well. But anyway, that's a pivot and not digressing. Let's get back into your story. Yeah. Yes, so got that. That part of the story is still in chapter 3, and there are more chapters to come. So that's fine. So let's get back into the pivot. And Rajiv, you're reading about Rajiv Patel, and you've been influenced by. Yeah, go ahead.
So I did this CIM December. Let me get the dates right. So I kept my ultra sign up record so that I can be factually correct as well. So this was December 2013. December 2013 is when I did the California International Marathon. I was feeling pretty good. And I heard about this Woodside 50K.
Okay.
And I was like, I did a 26.2. I'm feeling great. At the end of the year, before the year finishes, my goal for 2013 is to do a 50K. So I signed up for the Woodside 50K. And I drive and reach at Woodside. So first thing, in an ultra, right? There's nobody around, right? There are a bunch of like 50 odd people who are signing up, and that's it. So I said, okay, great. I took my road shoes. I had no idea of trail. I had never hiked on a trail. I had never run on a trail. And so first 5 miles was straight up. And I wasn't running. I was running out of breath just walking up. In the first 10 miles, I twisted my ankle.
Wow.
Right? I did not know how to run, like false bottoms, roots, rocks.
Yeah.
I was all over the place. And I figured I'm like, dude, I signed up for something way beyond my reach. And I remember mile 22 to 24-ish, I was in the middle of a jungle in Woodside. Well, at that time it felt jungle because I'm not the trail guy at all.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
Absolutely.
finding anybody around me,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing noises. And I'm just sitting there. I'm thinking, what did I do? Because the next aid station is the finish line. So I was just sitting there clueless. I'm afraid, leg is hurting, dehydrated, not eating enough, no concept of nutrition in ultras, in a mess. And then somebody came along and I call her my trail angel, Gabriela Martinez. She is another runner. And she was like, amigo, what happened to you? Let me take you along. I think it's your first run. Yeah. And then there's another girl with her. It was her first as well. And she was winded out as well. And this girl, she literally started chatting us up and just walking us through, shuffle down hills and walk up hills to the finish line. And I can't forget that. Right. And so when I came back, I was like, I'm done. I'm way out of my league. What is this? Just 6 or 5 miles of difference, but a huge amount of learning that stands between a road run and a trail run. So I started reading up again. I said, no, I need to read this up. This is
I just want to call out something here because I think that's I like your strategy. Yeah. And this can be for a lot of people. There are different types of approaches to getting into something new. But I think your approach of let me jump into it with the intention that you're committed to that particular project you're taking on. Yeah. It's not a half-hearted effort for sure. I can hear that in what you're saying. It was not a half-hearted effort at all. But your intention was, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to learn as I go along.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing approach for anyone who is, and a lot of people, are sitting on the bench, right? Should I do? Should I not do? There's always fear and stuff like that. But I think your story is a classic, encouraging example that, hey, it's not going to kill you, man. Just jump in, you'll learn something, and as you go along, you'll calibrate, and you'll come out as a better version of yourself at the end of it.
Yeah.
So that's a good. Yeah. Go ahead.
I've tried the other way too. Like I said, right, this huge gap in doing any sort of physical activity between my school life and college and work just flew past by just procrastinating, right? And so I can't take that time back ever, right? Yeah. And so now I am like, you just need to go for it. Yeah. And so you will see there is a significant amount of failures on the way in my journey. But yeah, so after that 50K, I started reading a lot, right? And that's what, the theory of evolution is you got to start taking incremental steps. Okay, what's the right kind of shoe? Okay, don't forget your still basics from your road marathon, the warm-ups and everything else. I had a lot of ITB issues when I started off running half marathons, but over a couple of years, 3-4 years, worked on myself to strengthen the muscles around my leg. And so no more ITB issues. So, nutrition, and it's still learning, right? And not there yet, right? Ultra is such a world where you feel you're there yet, you've made it, and then there is a big reality check. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so from there on, I said, okay, next year is devoted to trails. And then when I started looking at the trails, I've never even hiked on trails. And looking at the beauty of this place, I was blown away. I was like, I'm not going to pay anything for the road runs anymore. I don't want people around me. I just want to experience the trails. The whole culture is completely different. It's not competitive. You get to make a lot of people as friends, and the conversations that you have and the diversity of people that you have there, everyone helping each other out in that community. I think that kind of, I was much more attracted to those group of people. Because at work and everywhere else, it's a lot of outcomes, right? You're always looking for some tangibles and stuff like that. And here you meet a doctor or a school teacher and you have the conversation that you would never have otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that made a change in lifestyle too. Lifestyles on the weekends were something else otherwise before this.
That makes a lot of sense. We just want to call out here something. I completely agree with that observation that you made, which is, and for people who are listening to this, right? Some of them would be still starting their running journey. They're mostly doing road runs. And this distinction that you're talking about, which is the world of ultras or world of trail running in general, is a lot more laid back, is less competitive. It's very community oriented. It's about camaraderie. Sorry, it's about exploring nature. So that's an important point you're making. And also, I think the point that you're making about, the regular life, your day-to-day life of a job and stuff is already very competitive. It's very stressful. And then you come into running and then you're stressing about, oh my God, my PB or PR is not where it is. My pace is not where it is. And I think I hear what you're saying. And I kind of relate to and agree with that as well, because if you are pivoting into a recreational activity that's going to make you more stressful than your regular life, it kind of contradicts the whole idea of getting into that. So that's a great point that you make. Continue, please.
Yeah, so 50Ks were order of the day. And so what I did from there on is, I think I did a bunch of 50Ks. So on 2013 was December 29th was my first 50K. And my first 100-mile attempt was 20, I think it was 2014 or 2015. Yeah.
Wow. That's quite a, so you did the first 50K, and did you do a 50 miler in between, or you kind of
did
50Ks?
So I did a bunch of 50Ks. So I think I did about 3 or 4 50Ks all the way to mid 2014. And then I see that I did a San Francisco 50 miler.
Okay.
In August 2014. So within a span of 6 months from my 50K, I went on to do a 50 miler, right? And again, 50 miler was terrible, right? First 50 miler was terrible, but not that bad, I would say. I learned enough about nutrition and everything. I still call that phase of my life as the Gatorade phase, very high on Gatorade, right?
I hear you.
So, gels and Gatorade, that was my thing at that time.
So what did you learn? You said you learned something from 50 miles to 50K to 50 miles.
Yeah.
You stumbled on multiple learnings. So do you want to kind of maybe talk about a couple of key learnings in this?
I think the first is obviously the type of training that you want to have. Not counting miles, but counting hours on feet. That was my transition from road to trails. Is how am I going to train? Today I'm going to go out and do 3 hours on my feet. And then adding hills and trails in my training. So just go and do, there's tons of trails here in the Bay Area, and fortunate climate remains pretty good most of the year. So first is that counting in terms of hours. Second, nutrition, concepts of nutrition and the right gear that you want to wear. Nutrition in the sense that you got to start figuring out aid stations. Aid stations are longer than a road race. So you got to eat, and you got to eat early. Because if you eat when you're about to bonk, it's already too late. The recovery is going to take that much longer. So that concept of eating early came in, leveraging, making the best use of the aid stations. That happened. And then the simple concepts that I was really unaware of, carrying enough water with you and electrolyte. So, in simple terms, how much of electrolyte, how much of calories, those concepts came over, right? To say, okay, you can't just run on like tribal knowledge, right? You can just push through these events. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a terrible result. And as I started doing more, I also realized the counter is always set to 0. I mean, you understand the stuff, you know everything, but you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to run a 50K. That experience is not going to be that optimal, right? You got to work.
So on your nutrition, right?
Yeah.
What did you have to do different? How did you calculate your calorific needs? Did you have some kind of a thumb rule? I mean, obviously everybody doesn't walk around with a calculator but is there like a thumb rule that you personally use today, which helps you in not bonking and being able to eat ahead? How do you go about that?
So I would say, I have 2 classes of races now, right? 100 mile and below is a category. And the longer races beyond 100 mile, right?
For most of people who are listening to this, like, really? especially if you are from the world of marathons, like, really? There is another domain. Okay, we're going to talk about that, but we haven't reached there yet. Go ahead.
I mean, so any race which is either a 50K or beyond, I think my rule of thumb right now is, I would say 50K to 100 miles. I am specifically saying anything beyond is a different game. About 200 calories an hour.
Okay.
Right? The source of those calories can differ based on how I'm feeling. So 50Ks and 50 miles, even 100Ks, I will rely mostly on gels. Because I can take those gels. It's either a gel, because gels are like 100 calories. What I have also started doing now in the last 2-3 years is a lot on Tailwind. So Tailwind is an electrolyte drink with calories. So you don't need to use gels all the time. So what I do is I have Tailwind, and so 1 sachet of Tailwind mixed with water is about 200 calories. So, and that has enough sodium and electrolyte to last through, because I sweat a lot. And so I need a lot of electrolyte to balance it. So it's basically on a good day that is warm, it's 1 bottle, about 17 ounce of Tailwind that has got 200 calories and enough electrolyte. So 0 cramping. Initially I had a lot of cramps in my 50Ks and 50 milers. No cramping, because I figured that's the right amount for me. And then a gel once in 2 hours. So you're getting 200 calories consistently through Tailwind. And I can do that like for an extended period of 8 to 10 hours.
Okay. Interesting. That's a great tip. Yeah.
Right. So, you got to just take your calories and you understand how much you sweat, right? Based on that, you got to have enough sodium. Sometimes when I'm not able to take Tailwind, then I take S caps, electrolyte, just salt taps, and then have regular food at the aid station. But regular food at the aid station will never catch up to the calories. That I have understood. That's my personal experience. Other people might be different. But how much ever like you take potatoes or other things at the aid station, it might make you feel good, like filling. You might need that, but it's not going to replenish the calories. So you got to take some sort of calories that are easily digestible, whether it's Tailwind or a GU or a Cliff Bar or something else. So my go-to thing right now is Tailwind, GU. I can't take Cliff Bars because I need as much gluten-free as possible. I try to avoid gluten. That's about it. And a lot of food, whatever I get at the aid station, I'm not too finicky about that. So I think I can take in whatever I can. And then I try different bars once in a while. There's this Lara bar coming in now. Researching a lot about food now, right? As you go to the longer distances, you figure out the whole balance shifts more towards natural food.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the eating and drinking plan, and that keeps me consistently cramps free, right? So that's what I have dialed in right now. Hema will tell you for the race, I wasn't able to take tailwind at all. So I had to switch my strategy, for the longer race.
So actually, let's get into that, right? So, so I think that's great tips, very practical tips that any one of us can start practicing. So you got to 100 miles, and you're sailing, and obviously by now all of us have realized that you're the kind of guy who is looking for the next thing, and you're also the kind of guy who jumps into it and then figures it out, right?
Yes.
So 100 miles done. What else was on the horizon for you?
So 100 mile, my first attempt, I remember Rio del Lago was a DNF again, right? Because the same thing, I signed up. I had no community support. I knew no one who actually ran 100 mile. And I was running by myself. I was doing good. At mile 75, it was in Auburn along the Sacramento River. It was dark in the night. I did not have enough night training. I was afraid. I was just sitting there at mile 75 in the middle of nowhere, waiting for some runner to show up. That was my state. And I did, I was feeling so pathetic about myself. I started crying there at mile 75. And I know I can finish this race, but I don't want to go. It's too dark. I'm just looking at eyes in the jungle. I don't know. There are wild animals out there. So I waited a good 20-25 minutes for somebody to join me. And all of us in that group who were running together DNF'd because we missed the cutoff. Right? So that was another lesson for me. My next lesson was, okay, training is okay. Hydration is okay. Gear is okay. Now you need a community. You need someone to pace you. Right? And I did not have the concept of pacing.
I'm going to give the name for your recipe for it's called how to be successful in ultra marathons with DNFs. Totally. Awesome. Continue, please.
So so I felt really bad for a very long time for that race because physically I was okay, but I did not have a support system. And so I was like, I can't do this by myself. I need the support system. And so after a few years, I remember and then I started reaching out. I started having the, hey, can you help me? Hey, I'm running this race. Can you come and pace for me? I would never do that otherwise. I would be always very internal. Okay, let me do this. I don't know whether I'll be able to finish or not. And so I remember my first successful 100-miler, Headlands on Red. I asked this road marathoner, hey, come and pace me, night section, mile 50 to 75. After that, I'm good. And he never ran a trail, but he was a very fast road runner. And he showed up, mile 50 to 75, we ran together. And I finished my first 100-miler successfully.
Yay.
Right? This was Headlands. And, I felt amazing. And then it was like, what next? So I was doing a few 100-milers. Since then I think I've done a Scout Mountain 100-miler. I finished what I did not finish. Rio del Lago, I came back and finished a couple of years later. And then I was like, okay, started reading up these 200-milers. By that time, I had this amazing group of people that I started knowing in the Bay Area. A lot of people of Indian origin or of Southeast Asian origin were running these ultra trail races. And just knowing about them, and not just knowing about elite athletes that you keep reading everywhere, it gives a huge boost. You can say an average person, when we say average, obviously they are super athletes. but they have a regular life and they are able to run, right?
Yeah.
And so that gets me a huge boost. Okay, let's exchange notes. Let's exchange what do you do? Because I'm not going to run. I don't have the time to run like 100 miles a week. I just don't. So how do you balance all of that and still make it happen? So yeah, long story short, bring all of that together. I signed up for Tahoe 200.
Yeah. What year was this? This was what, 2016, 17?
Yes. So I'll have to look up my ultra sign up.
Okay.
2018, September 2018.
Okay.
It's Tahoe 200. And the only person I knew who did a 200-mile race was my running buddy called CJ Dhaliwal. Now, I was looking up CJ, and CJ lived in the neighborhood. He has done Badwater. I have run a few 100-mile races with him. So that's how I got to know about him. And he has done Brazil 135 and all that sort of crazy races. And I was like, CJ, you're signing up for Tahoe. He DNF'd the previous year. I'm just following you. Tell me what needs to be done. So he shared a spreadsheet with me. He's like, look at this spreadsheet. And I was blown away by the amount of planning that is required. I said, what is this? I mean, 100-mile, I get it. Okay, overnight, you need to stay one night out and you run. And this was totally different, right? Where do you sleep? What do you eat? Like 4, 5, 6 drop bags with all of your gear, change of clothes, taking care of your feet, change of shoes. I knew I signed up for something way bigger than I can actually handle. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to follow CJ. So I showed up in Tahoe 200 and I was overwhelmed at the start line, I remember, with a heavy backpack, lots of water, everything you can imagine, to the kitchen sink in my backpack. And started
so for the folks who are listening to this, right, just to give, Tahoe 200 is a 200-mile foot race.
It is about 206 miles, I guess. Yes, it's a 206 miles foot race. It circles around Lake Tahoe, and it circumvents the complete lake. So it's in high altitude. I think the race is somewhere around 6,000 feet to about 9,800 feet in terms of altitude. The total climbs, I think, are about over 30,000 feet.
Right. So for the people who are listening to this is a completely a different realm of possibility.
Yes.
So I think it's amazing. Your story is so nice in the sense it's very linear, but I know there's more to it that was going on your front, which was non-linear, which we are not going to ever get to because that's so personal and it's inside over there. But on paper, at least, it looks very linear. Half marathon, 50K, 50 mile, 100 mile. But also, I think in each of that milestone, you seem to have obviously gone on to a different realm because it's unimaginable for an regular person, even a runner, 200-mile foot race. 100 mile itself is a big domain, big jump in faith. And then you're talking about 200. So I just want for us to pause and just let that sink in, right? Amazing.
And that fact fascinates me. To be very honest, even I was an observer when I started off, right? I wasn't this elite runner. I haven't run for years, right? Mile 1 was terrible for me. But like I said, years of procrastination and the need to develop an identity for myself, right, has led to this. Obviously, you need to have an interest for running, right? You can't do all of this if you're not interested to run. But from an interest, from a concept, from an idea, from a visual, to actually make it happen are these series of missteps, are the series of learnings, right? And what it does is also builds a tremendous amount of tenacity mentally. Right? I am, like I said, 10 years back, or if you started running like 12 years back, we are still the average Joes I am still the average Joe,
Yeah.
right? It still
Absolutely.
takes an effort to run 100 miles. It still takes an effort to run 1 mile,
Yeah.
but it's it's a lot of things that come together, right? It's the
Yeah.
love for the trails. I I would never see these awesome trails otherwise. There is no way I could see these
Mhm.
awesome trails. It's not a family hike that you go when you see
Mhm.
these awesome trails. You got to go like 10, 15 miles to reach to a point where the water is so pure you can just drink of it,
Mhm.
or you can just sit for a while and look around and say wow, right? So
Yeah.
it's a love for the trails. It's definitely a challenge. I wouldn't deny that. It's always a challenge. It always fascinates me, like you are talking about, is that there is something people have done before us that is absolutely inspiring.
Mhm.
And it would be, in my opinion, the way I see it is it's criminal for me not to attempt it.
Mhm.
I'm fine failing,
Yeah. No, that's
but
a
I,
great
I
attitude.
choose not to not attempt it.
Great mindset. Great
Yeah.
mindset. I mean, that's a mindset that is repeatable for any one of us who wants to take on something big and great. All right, let's get back to Tahoe 200. You were talking
Yeah.
about.
So Tahoe 200, my plan was to just chase CJ because I knew CJ had a plan. Mile one, I can't see CJ. He's gone. I'm like, dude, I'm on my own. What do I do now? I had a sense, thankfully, to get a pacer. Luis, he was pacing me from mile 64 all the way to mile 120. So that was awesome. So I went along, right? I went along, learning on the way. I did not know when to sleep. Should I sleep? So I wasted a whole lot of time at the air station trying to sleep when I was not sleepy. And then first night, I remember meeting an Australian guy, Scott. He had flew down all the way from Australia to run this race, and he had done it last year. And I was like, okay, great. I need to tag team with him. And this has been some of my philosophies as well. I look up to people who are experienced. I'm like, okay, Scott has done it. I'm sure he has flew down from Australia. He's definitely finishing this race. I'm going to just tag team with him for a while. So I asked him, do you mind if I tag team with you out of the aid station? And he said, yeah, sure, mate. Come on, come along with me. So I joined him for a while, and then he wasn't feeling really well. So, I went ahead. Mile 135, I DNF'd. And I remember so my pacer, he was awesome, right? He and his wife and his son, by the way, Luis's son, Stefan, must call out, is the youngest ultramarathoner, BigFoot 200 finisher at the age of 18.
Wow.
So father and son, I've run with them a lot of times. And so anyway, about mile 120, 125, this was hitting night three. Night three is what I call, when you talk about walls in marathons and half marathons, for these sort of races, 200-mile races, night three is the wall. If you go through night three, you have much, much higher chances of success. So night three, I was all over the place. I was alone at night. It's completely foggy, super sleepy, dehydrated. I had throat pain. It was very cold in Tahoe. And before that, I had a mini episode of hypothermia. So I had to sleep on the trail. It was night 2 in an emergency bivvy for about an hour. So I recovered from there, had a mountain lion sighting that night too. All happened. And then the third night, super sleepy, just running zigzag, right? Can't walk straight, can't run straight. And everything is an animal, feeling cold, totally parched, can't take water because throat is hurting, super cold. I remember just sleeping on a rock, looking up in the sky, almost giving up. And just to keep myself awake, singing "The wheels on the bus go round and round." That's something that I used to sing to my son. So I reached to the aid station in a really bad shape and just collapsed. They had a cot, just collapsed there. And I just heard the last word I heard them saying is, do you want some hot coffee? I couldn't take anything. I just collapsed there. They put some heater, they put some warm blankets on me. I woke up in the morning and missed the cutoff. Drove back to the hotel and really felt bad about it. But, head was spinning nonstop, right? I think I got a little bit of altitude sickness as well. But yeah, that was a story. And I heard CJ finished it.
And by now, we all know that your whole strategy of dealing with everything is from a DNF. So we know where we're going next.
Yes. So I have a target now.
Yeah.
Target is I need to do Tahoe again. Right. So I did that. Then I again went into this whole psyche. Okay, what does it take? I can understand 100. By the way, after that, whenever I come back into hundreds, it's a very tough race, 100, because it doesn't give you so many chances like a 200 to recover from a mistake. But mentally, it becomes much more easier, right? Because you have done a 135 miler, even though you DNF'd, you come back and do the 100, you say, okay, it's just one night. I need to survive just one night now. So yeah, I did a bunch of hundreds after that also, but Tahoe went DNF. Next year, tried BigFoot 200. BigFoot 200 is an increasingly more difficult race than Tahoe. And then Hima, he came over and he said, I'm going to pace you. By that time, we had this wonderful community of Desi runners in the Bay Area. And we started running in the mornings and etc. So he came to pace me. There was this another guy, a wonderful ultra runner and more of a hiker and backpacker now, Pawan. He helped me as well. And he came along and he said, I'm going to be your crew and pacer as well. So I had a good team to support me in BigFoot. In BigFoot, my challenge was in the first 10 miles of the race, I had 10 ankle twists.
Ouch.
These were minor ankle twists that had a big payback later part of the race. So my foot was swollen. I couldn't walk. I did a last burst, but again, same around mile 131, I DNF'd. I was well ahead of cutoff. Hima was with me, but I couldn't even rest my foot. It was swollen. Again, bad mistake that I had to pay up. Wasn't getting used to the terrain, a little rocky terrain in the initial part of the race, and had to pay for it. Again, a huge regret, right? Huge regret. You keep thinking, what should I have done different? So yeah, after that, so this is 2 successive years. In between some hundreds, 50 miles, 50 Ks, marathons. I'm doing all of that. Tahoe 200 DNF, this time DNF. Conventional wisdom would say, let's think, let's prepare a little more or do. What I do next year is I call up Hima. I can totally see he's interested. And there's another guy, say, let's sign up for Triple Crown. Triple Crown is 3 200-mile races, one month apart. So the first one is Tahoe 200, which is actually about 206 miles. Oh, sorry, the first one is BigFoot in August. That's the toughest in my opinion because it's super remote. Second is Tahoe 200, which is in August, is September. And then Moab 240, the 240 miler, which is in October. I signed up for all 3.
And where is BigFoot? Where is
BigFoot is in Washington State. So it's in Mount St. Helens and that area. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very remote. It's, again, like when you go to this, it's like a, I would say, top tier of these races, like super remote. You can't see a hiker, you can't see a jogger, you can't see anybody. The trails are not that well kept. So you have to literally bushwhack your way through. Not great holding on the trails. So you have to be careful. Otherwise you can take a fall. What happens is when you go to other races after that, the perspective really adjusts your brain in a way that everything else looks a lot less of a suffering. So that has helped me tremendously. Although 100 miles still is a very high intensity race, but mentally I'm more prepared for it, I would say, because I even attempted these races before that.
Sense. And one question that's popping in my mind is, what about physical pain? How, first of all, is that something that you have stopped experiencing now with so many of these races behind you, or do you get it and you have a hack to deal with it and keep moving?
You get physical pain in any race if your level of preparation is not great, or something different happened. You weren't able to take enough nutrition. The terrain wasn't that great. You haven't prepared for the terrain. The weather changes. Right. So physical pain happens always, right? 2 to 3 things. Again, all of these things is very internal. And you need to have a certain mindset to tackle that. I keep repeating a saying that I've heard, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah.
There will be pain. Are you willing to take that pain? What is your motivation, right? Why are you willing to take that pain? And then obviously there is a little bit of rational thinking to say, is this pain life-threatening? Or is this pain bringing an injury to me that is going to last well beyond my will to run? So that you have to definitely take. For example, in BigFoot, when my foot swelled up so much, I could not take that pain anymore. So I had to leave it. Probably somebody with a little more mental fortitude would have gone through and said, hey, it's fine. I can do the rest. But I could not. That was my limit, right? Because putting one foot down was painful. So pain hasn't gone away. Yes, when the pain comes, at what situations it comes, I have definitely stretched it to a point where it is a little later than it used to be. So if I will have an ITB pain at mile 8 of a half marathon, now I will probably have pain at mile 70 of a 100 miler. Right?
I've always heard from women, and I'm sure your wife probably would agree with this, is that the most painful experience for a human being is childbirth. And I don't know, and I always tell my wife when I am also running, and especially a few of the some of the ultras that I tried, I've experienced tremendous pain at certain points, and I've had to keep going. And of course, the pain then dissipates a little bit as you keep pushing. But I think I don't know if it is as intense as what women would describe as childbirth. We'll never know.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you're spot on, right? Again, all of these things are relative, like you said, right? Yes, I mean, we as males would never experience that, right? But we can only imagine.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so the pain that we, there is a downside to this as well, because we have kind of, anyone who does ultras have a very high threshold of pain tolerance, and you build it over a period of time. Right. So you get insensitive to pain elsewhere as well. So if I'm hiking with my kid and he says it's hurting, I literally ignore it. Right.
Understood.
Same concept carries over at work as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm used to not sleeping through the night and working sometimes. Right. It's just that ultra tendency. If you really want to get something going. So I have also noticed one of the downsides of this is you get a little desensitized with these ultras. So you have to sort of recalibrate yourself when you come to the normal world to be a little more receptive to things around you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So the pain tolerance doesn't go away, but you have to manage it, and it is a sine curve. It is absolutely true for every case is that the pain goes away. Now, you give up before the pain goes away, you take some rest at home, the pain does go away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whether within the race or whether after the race, the pain goes away.
Yeah.
And so there is no shame in giving up, but it is very important to analyze the reasons behind it.
Yeah.
It's very important to do something different next time.
Yep. Yep. Totally. Yeah. Makes sense. Yep. Let's come back to the 240.
Yeah.
You were just beginning to talk about the Triple Crown. Yeah.
Yeah. So we signed up for the Triple Crown and the pandemic came in, right? So what to do? All the races got canceled. And so the only race that was on was Moab 240. And so, Hema wasn't signed up for Moab. He signed up for the first 2 races and he was on the fence for Moab. He was like, we will see if I finished first 2 races. So, when they announced that the Moab race is on, I knew, and I have run a lot with Hema by that time, right? We did a bunch of races just on our own. We did a 50 miler on our own. We did a 150 miler on our own as well, right? Again, brilliant community of runners. I can tell you, we are spoiled here with the community. The community of runners are so awesome. They're going to get you food every time they hear you're going to run, and you're going to be pampered so much, even a self-supported race, that, I'm just very, very honored to be part of this community here.
Amazing.
Who support each other. So went there, Hema wasn't signing up. I had to egg him a little, and he was like, okay, I'm in. Once he's in, because I know him really well. And it's really helps to have a partner in this. I can do a 100-mile race by myself. I cannot do a 200 or a 240-mile race by myself. I'm not there yet right now. I can tell you that. Perhaps at some point I will be, but I'm not there yet. It takes a lot mentally to do it on your own. You need some support system, a crew or a pacer or someone running with you. So I was very, very happy when he signed up, and he was in the wait list, and he somehow pulled through and got into the race, and I was very happy. And so, we went around, we said, okay, what do we do? We need a crew. Okay. And so we called up again, 2 people signed up, Kaushik and Taruna. Taruna was Hima's friend from college. They haven't met or talked to each other for years. And I don't know Taruna. Kaushik I know because we were part of the same running group here. And but so blessed were we that they had showed up. We planned it really well. We rented a RV and drove down to Moab. But the 2 years of DNF have taught me a lot, right? So one of the things that I did differently this time was lesser weight in the backpack, right? Generally, the backpack weight is heavier than a traditional 100-miler because you're carrying a lot more stuff. Aid stations in these 240-mile races are every, I would say 20 odd miles. So 20 miles, you're on your own. 20 miles in a remote section takes a good 8 hours. So you got to plan for staying on your own on those 8 hours. So have enough food, enough water. And in Moab, there weren't enough streams. In Tahoe, there are a lot of streams you can filter water out of. But Moab, there weren't any. So, but still, doing all of these races and then me and Hema running as well, I was very, very obsessed about managing the weight of my backpack. So I did a few backpacking trips also before that. And I really brought it down to a manageable level where I could feel like I'm a runner and not a hiker anymore. There are hikers who finish this race, but if you're not one, don't try to copy them because they will be in a consistent pace, whether it's uphill or downhill, and finish it. But if you're a runner, you got to still go to your DNA and, do whatever, run the downhills, hike the uphills and stuff like that. So yeah, backpack weight, we dialed it down. I dialed it down really well. The right backpack, the right kind of stuff, how accessible it is to take out and take in. cold weather wear, all of that, and the full list of things. It's I would say like a 2 years project for me, right? Wasn't for Hima. He hadn't done. He did 100 miler. He just showed up to 40 miles. But I know his mindset, and I am tuned to that. We are going to really do it well together. So yeah, we showed up at Moab with, I would say, with good preparation. We were prepared really well, and really looking forward to it, because a lot of investment had gone in, right? Investment in terms of time and effort. And this whole pandemic thing made it even more, you want it even more.
Right.
If you're traveling so far, there is a risk of exposure. So you would want to finish the project that you started off. So mentally, I think I was in the best shape starting off in Moab. In retrospect now, the best set of people I could ever imagine to support and crew. Because these guys, Taruna and Kaushik, they haven't crewed anyone earlier, I think. Kaushik, I think, probably had crewed in some smaller races. But they read a lot and learned a lot about the psyche of these races. Much more read than us. Taruna had every aid station, the time it will take for us to reach, what do we like, our preference of food. Dal, chawal, and ghee. Amazing. You can't beat that food anytime.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, so at the starting point, we were at the right frame of mind. So this is Moab 240 miles circumventing, starting from Moab, going all the way through all the canyons and coming back to Moab. There is no repeat sections, etc. Beautiful course, 8 stations, approximately 20 miles out. And if you start thinking about that, it's not going to work. So again, my philosophy this time was, let's go to the next aid station. So anytime I ask people and say, hey, how far are you going? They're like, okay, there's 200 more miles to go. I said, no, I'm just going to the next aid station. I don't even want to think beyond that.
Yeah.
So that's
sense.
how the race started.
Totally I saw there was about 150 folks who started the Moab 240, right?
Yeah, I checked. I think what happened was, I think about 180 people started. About 60 odd people DNF'd. 64 did not finish. 127 finished.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thank you. It was super hot, right? The way I would summarize this is day 1, day 2 was very hot. We weren't expecting that heat. And so a lot of people actually bailed out in day 1, day 2. In desert, and when you go through the canyons, the real heat, what you feel, is much more than just the temperature. So if you go by the temperature, you will be probably carrying less water. So I saw a lot of folks who were actually dehydrated. And I could feel for them, because I remember myself for the last 2 races that I have DNF'd. It's not an easy race. Any race like this is not easy. It's a multi-day event. You have to be at it all the time. You cannot let minor setbacks defeat you. And it's hats off to all these people who are doing that. Day 1, day 2 was very hot. And we got over, I was feeling really bad in day 1, day 2. Actually, after the second day, I was back in my elements. Day 2 was the day when I had the maximum amount of self-doubt. But like I said, my philosophy was, doubt yourself as much as you can between aid stations. But when you reach to that aid station, do not doubt yourself. And get out of that aid station, and then start doubting after that. Because there is no, you have enough time to think about, okay, I can't do this, I'm way out of my league, etc. Keep walking, move forward, make forward progress. Again, stop thinking about quitting at the aid station, because that's when you can quit, actually. You can't quit between the aid stations. So that worked well, really, for me. And I think I was much stronger mentally, much more prepared. But the support crew, I'll tell you, when you get the food, it's again, like I said, the nutrition philosophy for these long races at this distance um, is different. You don't count calories anymore. You just eat what you feel like eating. And I started going with the flow. All the gels and all the tailwind and everything for me. I think Hema did much better than me. But me went out the door. I was like, okay, aid station, I'll have some food, real food, and move forward. Think of it like an adventure event rather than a race. And that helped tremendously, right? So carried less weight. I don't have to take too much food, calculate way too many calories. Just go by your feel and just be mentally strong. Because, like every race, there will be at least, like in a marathon, there is at least one point you feel like you will not be able to do it. In a 240 miler, there will be probably about 10 times you will feel a doubt. The doubt can magnify a lot, or the doubt can be a little less. But you will, about 10 times you will feel that, something is not going right. And you just manage and make it happen. Yeah. So it was amazing.
So
yeah.
So this is a 5-day event, right? And a 4-day.
112
hours. So how much sleep do you get in between? Or are you mostly running?
Yes, you have to be on the go. I mean, unless you are an elite runner and you are running really fast, this has total about 30,000 feet of climb.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the highest altitude is 10,000 feet. You can't make a whole lot of progress, especially when your body degrades. So the sleep is very, very important to manage. We actually had proper sleep about, I would say, about 2 hours of sleep, 2.5 hours of sleep.
Net.
Wow. In all the, I think, 4 nights, all through 4 nights. And then the sleep that I was doing really well, that Hema was struggling, it was very close to costing him at the end of the race, is I got into this habit of trail naps. And I learned from my previous 2 DNFs that as well. And I was like, from the first night, just lie down for 15 minutes or 10 minutes and take a nap. And whenever I will lie down anywhere on the side of the trail at night, I would be snoring right away. So you take these short trail naps, that accelerates your resting and everything else, but you can't sleep, right? And that's the training. That's one of the different training that you do beyond 100 milers. It's the sleep deprivation is the biggest reason for people to really, feel disoriented, not feeling good about it, etc. We did some sleep deprivation training in 150-mile race that we just planned ourselves. Not nearly enough, I would say. But I did practice trail naps before I went to the race. So that helped me. Hema wasn't able to do that. So in that 15 minutes, when I'm having a deep 15 minutes of sleep, Hema is not sleeping. He's not getting enough sleep.
What is a trail nap?
It's just lying down on the side of the trail in the middle and having
trail naps. Okay.
Trail naps. Yeah.
Okay. I heard as trail naps. Okay. So got it. Trail naps. Okay.
So that I think all through the race, every night I was able to do that very effectively. And that gives you a huge boost. You can go on for a couple of more hours after doing that 15 minutes of sleep, getting that 15 minutes of sleep. So, when you move from 100 to these longer races, then the dimension that comes in is obviously your nutrition plan changes. You want to add in more real food to your plan. And then sleep deprivation and how to manage fatigue. Sleep deprivation is the biggest cause, I would say. And so you got to practice and learn, right? For few simple examples is, if you are running too much, you can't fall asleep right away. Too much hormones, right? Too much blood flow.
Right.
So if you're planning to sleep, then you should actually walk for a while, because then you can actually optimize that time. Because if you're sitting there for 20 minutes and not sleeping, you actually wasted that time. You're still tired.
Makes sense.
Right? So sleep deprivation is the thing in these longer races, especially I would say for mid-packers and backpackers like us. If I was like the front runner who finished the race in 60 odd hours, then all this thing doesn't matter. But we are slogging it out actually a couple of days more than everybody else.
Amazing. Yeah, I saw David Goggins also was a finisher.
Yes.
He thinks he's the second finisher.
He's the second, yeah.
Year.
And we saw him cross because the faster runner started off later than us.
Okay.
So we saw David Goggins cross. I mean, these guys are amazing. The amount of dedication and training that they have. For us, it's a lot of balancing. I keep saying, you got to run, you got to ace at work, you got to do good as a family person.
Yeah.
So there's this CAP theorem, right? In databases, they say consistency, availability, partition, tolerance. All three cannot happen together.
So how do you do it? How are you doing it?
What are your... To be very honest, there is absolutely no answer. It's a constant work in progress. Like, for example, after Moab, I had this commitment for the rest of the year, no races. And so
how does your wife feel about how does your wife feel now? You've been at it for almost 10 years and you've been pushing limits, going to the next level. What does she feel about it now?
I would say it's kind of oscillating between a sense of pride that obviously I'm doing something, accomplishing some of these outlandish things. And then also to a certain extent, a fear, right? A concern, right? Because not too many people that she's talking with are into that thing, right? And I can understand that. I mean, she didn't sign up to get married to an ultra runner, right? It happened. So what I would say is, like I said, like the CAP theorem, like if you want to ace at work, and if you want to ace at home, and if you want to ace at ultra running, all three cannot happen together. So what I do is I pick two of these things at a time.
Makes sense.
Right? So right now I'm focusing a lot on work and a lot on spending a lot of time with wife and kid. Understanding that there is a running season coming up next year. So I'm not spending a lot of time on the trail. I'm missing out on that. And I'm perfectly fine doing that. Right? Because that is important. And then as the season starts, what I do is I share my running calendar of my races that I have signed up for ahead of time. Then what I do is I plan vacations between those times. Right? And the other thing that I've also seen is, and I think it came from something that I was hearing about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, and they were talking about, Michelle was telling, I also always feel Barack is doing so many things and I'm not able to do all those things, right? So what I do is I try to encourage her in things she really wants to do. Because the good part is she's really big into healthy eating. So she is a big proponent of plant-based diet, right? And I have still not gotten into that. I am a work in progress, but I can totally understand the effect of nutrition in my sport. So if I get to the point where I can support her in that ambition of her, right, into getting into the right food, and she's totally like into it, understands the science behind it, I consider that as the next sense of evolution. And therein forms an opportunity to form some partnerships, kind of making it win-win.
Yeah. No, makes sense. That's a great...
But it's a constant work in progress. And then I would also say, to be very honest again, is at some point, you have to do it, what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the conversations, but I wouldn't say by any chance I'm doing justice to all three. Like I said, you got to pick your things and make it happen. I do, like I said, right, I could probably train more and pick up on speed, but I choose not to do it, and absolutely fine with it. I have no problems, right? Because I'm still doing these awesome races at these awesome distances, and my family is supporting it for that. So what else am I asking for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Terrific. Hey, fantastic conversation. I personally learned a lot in this conversation. I love the way you're a great storyteller, by the way. I hardly felt like that we've been having this conversation for a while. And also, I like the way you have been all about being courageous. I think, you can hear courage in your story, right? And if you're willing to put yourself out there, test it, calibrate, and move on. And that's a possibility for anyone who is trying to do anything outside their comfort zone. So you very well have mastered that, right? And so there's no way otherwise anyone can get to where you've gotten, which is to be able to do those 200-mile foot races. It's amazing. So congratulations again. And we're kind of coming to an end of our conversation. Anything else that you want to kind of say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just, thanks for this conversation. Wonderful, right? Because, I can tell you I am a consumer of a lot of these content, right? It just helps us get into the psyche of what other people are thinking. Like I said, I'm just an average guy who is trying to do a few things. That might sound spectacular, but you got to understand that 10 years back, I was at mile 1, struggling to complete a mile. So I would really want to say, if anyone wants to try all of this, it's completely doable, but the why is super important. If you are interested to do something, there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it. To what level you want to pursue it is a pure personal choice. That I totally get, right? For example, I did not pursue the triathlons. And that's totally fine. It's recreational swimming, recreational biking. But thanks for this interview. And I would say that Moab 240 was an amazing experience with Hima, with Taruna, with Kaushik, and all the support system that we have had around. It's a once in a lifetime experience, but totally worth it. And that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, continue pushing limits. We will continue following and following you. Are you on Twitter or Instagram? Is there a place for people to follow your journey?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm planning to be a more avid blogger. So I started off my first race report for Moab, and I will do a lot more of that. I'm on Facebook. But I think I'll do my blogging a little more to share some of my experiences. That's my commitment for this year.
And I will definitely share your blog on the show notes, and so people can read about it as well. Hey, so thanks again for sharing your fantastic journey, and keep at it. We'll follow you. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Yeah. And we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. Santosh, thank you. And hope to run a marathon together one of these better times.
Hey, tell me you want to run 100-miler with me. That's where I want to
go. Absolutely. If you are up for it, we'll get you there. 100%.
I want to.
Yeah.
So, and especially after speaking with you, it seems like there are a certain set of tips that you talked about. All the more feel a lot more encouraged.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot.
Sure. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.